principles that I teach around leadership are linked to neuroscience, so I'm going to be doing that throughout this kind of mini session with you. But what I am going to actually be showing you is a pivoting approach to leadership, and that's an acronym that I'm going to work through with you, and it's this 5-step principle of leadership competencies that can help you overcome your own brain hijack in case you experience that in the workplace, but more importantly addressing the problem that I have heard throughout every talk today actually, and particularly at the panel this morning, which is still around we do have a problem in the workplace around brain health or mental health or cognitive health, whatever your choice of language in your organisation that works for you. And now the workplace and the landscape has changed. What we know about resilience and brain health is that as soon as there's a change in our environment, our brain automatically goes through an experience, which is what I'm talking about today, the brain hijack. So has anyone got a brain hijack, a classic brain hijack that they experience, maybe on a regular basis, or one that a significant one they've experienced in their life, and it can be outside or inside of work?
3 o'clock chocolate.
3 o'clock chocolate? Tell me more about that. What happens?
Sometimes, every day at 3 o'clock I just want chocolate, so everything goes into chocolate mode and I forget. Like, I'm not thinking about what's on my screen.
So you're the chocolate monster. Oh, 3 o'clock in the afternoon as well. So I was thinking 3 a.m. So 3 o'clock, not the cookie monster. 3 p.m. Dip in something going on, energy source for you, chocolate. I need that to overcome that. What's the brain doing in that moment? It's repeating something to you. Something is being tripped off, which comes from the limbic system, which is a very small part of our brain at the back, that holds all of our emotional response and threat response. That's where the flight, and freeze comes from. And actually, it's the smallest but the fittest part of our brain and the most powerful. So it drives everything that we do in terms of our actions, thinkings, and behavior. So when that happens, it hijacks the rest of the brain, and this beautiful piece of the brain at the front of our brains, it's the last session of the day, guys, stick with me. This beautiful section at the front of our brain, this muscle called the frontal cortex, which is where all of our logic and reasoning is held. So when we're experiencing challenges in our environment, we need to be using our frontal cortex because that is where we can do our best work. But unfortunately, thank you to our ancestors in the world of work, the baby boomers who pushed with deadlines, KPIs, back-to-back meetings, and that performance management culture, we've become quite limbic fit. So I'm going to talk to you about how you can lead through continual change and reduce the fitness of your limbic system, the small part at the back of your brain that actually hijacks all of your brain and all of your thinking and all of your actions, because you can't get rid of that until you've had that chocolate. How powerful is that? Do you reach for the chocolate every time? Wow.
But then it goes worse because then I'm fighting with myself and I'm still not concentrating.
Okay. So we're going to talk about a little bit more of that in depth in a moment. Thank you. So my principle for leadership is pivoting in leadership. But one thing I want to make really clear here, when we pivot in leadership, I'm not talking about the oh shit moment we have when everything goes wrong in leadership for us in the workplace and we think, pivot, we need to do something differently here. What are we going to do? Because actually that's still quite limbic behavior. It's actually thinking about continual change as being the landscape that we're operating in all the time and just having the ability to be able to cope with that and having a frontal cortex that allows us to do that. So that's as far as I'm going to go with the science. It's very exciting or boring for some. I geek out on that, but we can talk more about the science later on. So my limbic hijack's just gone off. This is an absolutely shocking picture according to my brain and my perception about me, but I think it's really relevant that I put this up. And the reason that I've put this up is because this was the moment for me in my career where I realized that I think I've got the solution to the problem in the workplace around the mental health depletion we're seeing and people not being able to cope with continual change. So I was feeling pretty smug at this stage. And what I know is that my leadership approach will boost wellness in the workplace. It'll boost the capacity to take on more wisdom, so reduce that skill gap, and it'll help us have the aptitude to win and persevere when we need to in the workplace. So it's really going to help our workforce overcome those challenges. You know the landscape, we've talked about it already. We've gone on this journey working in a hierarchical approach in our organisations where everything probably we thought looked safe, but we had the problem back then if we're really honest, and I think that came out in the panel discussion today. Now we're working much more in a fluid environment, and actually the brain does not enjoy this so much. I mean, some people who say, I love change, and I love freedom, and I love autonomy, yes, you might be absolutely thriving in this new world of work, hybrid, where we are orbiting around our culture, purpose and values to deliver on our services or our products in our industries that we love. But actually having the ability to lean on structures, formalities and things that were there in the past are actually causing our brain to hijack on a number of occasions repeatedly as change occurs in our environment. So, what do we do? Well, I'm imagining you will have all known this trusted change curve that we lean on in leadership development and change management, where we look at the emotional response that we all go through when we are leading change or experiencing change. And the thing about the change curve is it's a really useful tool for us to be able to think about where our people might be if we are transitioning to something that's pretty groovy in the future in our organization and we are driving energy towards that and we're showing them something shiny and new. But actually, the problem lies in that we do not spend enough time looking at what they've lost as we go through that transition. And the brain does not enjoy that. So that's why we have the change curve. It's a grief curve. It looks at what is lost, not what is gained through change. So we're very quick to say, we're going to restructure or change this so we can meet the needs of our customers and clients or deliver our products better. But actually what that does for people is that they try and get to I want to be engaged in that vision and through this continual change, but I cannot until you address what I'm losing as a result of it. And that's where we start to see change fatigue creeping in, because the brain scientifically cannot handle that until it's done the grief piece for what was lost. So we teach leaders on our pivot program, and we are now starting to call them pivot leaders. We teach them to understand that depression is very much a normal limbic response to a piece of change, and that we will all experience that from time to time if we are in an environment that's continually changing, because it's a natural response to the loss from the change. And what we teach on the Pivot program is support structures for our leaders to be able to work with our team members through a coaching technique that ensures that we can bring people through the depression phase, because it's not a fixed state. What we know about low resilience when it occurs is a state, not a trait, so it is very movable. We can move that if we can create environments that are right for our people, and leadership is the biggest environment that we can offer to our people in our organisation, as well as the bricks and mortar. So thinking about your organisations and how they are now operating in this more fluid context, and I'm sure you're all doing that in some shape or form based on the recent disruption that we've been through, what I know from my big insights is that well-being is under threat. We heard it this morning, and we know it is big. What was the statistics for me again today? I can't remember, sorry. 54%. Yeah, of people who are absent from the workplace is related to poor mental health at work. Poor mental health, sorry. Yeah, so well-being is under threat. We have a duty to do something about this in organisations. There is a lack of confidence and skill gap in terms of leaders not being able to lead in this new world, this kind of online world in some places, or under pressure due to the changes in the way that we're operating. And there's a confidence drop. So we need to do something about that to increase the wisdom for our leaders. And then what we are seeing is those who have teams that have gone through a lot of change and have not been equipped to deal with that, and now experiencing a low aptitude to win. So they understand where the organisations are going and what they want to achieve. But who was it who said there was a really low engagement rate in the last workshop? Yeah, thank you. I'm going to call you Statistics Sally. Okay, how many? 80? 18% are engaged. Only 18% are engaged. If we've only got 18% of the workforce engaged, there is a very low aptitude to win. So without having the welfare and health issues around having the aptitude to win, they're not engaged to win. So we've got to do something about that psychologically. So, change fatigue. Anyone experiencing change fatigue in their organisation at the moment? What does that look like? What are the symptoms? Constant. Overwhelm. We're seeing overwhelm, yeah. Nothing sticks. Nothing sticks. Yes, so that perseverance to see things through to the end, and embedding change. I love that one. Let's do a piece of change. Oh, let's get really excited about this. Oh, we didn't embed it, so it didn't work. How do we make that better? Well, we need to do that using neuroscience to help us. Thank you. So, the brain hijack. What we know is it comes from the threat and reward system. So, as I've explained, we go through a pandemic and we have lots of limbic behavior. Do you remember all the limbic behavior that we were all demonstrating when we went to the supermarkets? Yeah. Masks on. Ooh, I'm going to get COVID. You know, that is limbic behavior. That's a limbic hijack. We all started behaving in a certain way to overcome the threat response. Road rage. Anyone get a bit of road rage? Husbands, yeah. Why is that? What is that all about? I've got one of those. Gets in the car, thinks he's like, you know. Yeah, limbic hijack. As soon as you get in the car, limbic hijack. Communicating a piece of change in our organisation. How do you feel about that when you've got to do it? If you know the response is going to be negative, limbic hijack. What I'm trying to demonstrate here is a limbic hijack can happen in a nanosecond. Unless we're really aware of that, then we cannot overcome it. And it can also happen multiple times over and over again whenever some new information is perceived in our environment. So our brain just does it. Depending on how fit your limbic is will depend on how many hijacks you experience. I actually don't have any figures on that, but you will know this from your own personal journey. But what statistic I do have is that every time you have a limbic hijack, the harmful hormones in your body take 18 minutes to expel, if you like, or be eaten up by bliss molecules. So there's another little bit of science in there. So as leaders, as we go around one-to-one in our teams, talking to them about what they're doing in the workplace, do you think we might be tripping off a limbic hijack in others? Do you think we have an awareness and a grip on that? Now, I'm not saying we're responsible as leaders for the ill health, mental ill health of our workforce. But what I am saying is there's a lot that we can do to improve that if leaders know how to deliver pivot leadership. The pain you'll be experiencing if you have overactive limbic and lots of limbic hijacking going on in your organisation is reduced performance, because people can't do the long-term logic and reasoning. They can only be reactive and firefighting, so you will spend a lot of time wasting your time delivering the excellence you're trying to deliver. You will see amplified divisions, potential conflict more than collaboration, and in groups and out groups, because people tend to, limbic hijacking is actually quite contagious. So if I had a reaction to something that piece of change is going to mean I'm going to lose my job, you're going to think that, and I say it out loud, you're going to think that, you're going to think that, and we're all hijacking. So there's a really big kind of potential for this contagious behavior in organizations that reduces our ability to deliver on value. Also, we lose talent because of limbic hijacking. So, and some of you will be thinking, that's what I came here to actually. Have you got a solution for this, Emma? Because, you know, we talked about a lot about this today. How do I retain my best talent? Well, pivot leadership will go a long way in terms of making the environment right so your people want to stay and deliver. So we definitely make a dent in terms of money, time, emotion, and health benefits for organizations. So what is pivot leadership? This is the solution. It's actually not that difficult. It's the basics of leadership, but honed together into a model that is easily accessible, and it's a framework for leaders to lean on when operating in the current climate, and it also really helps with the 24/7 connected business world that we now find ourselves in. So we train our pivot leaders to think about perseverance and work in the perseverance place when they are working with their people. What we know when we build the perseverance muscle, and this frontal cortex is working really well in our organizations, we are tripping off the dopamine pipeline. So we are scientifically operating in a way that's going to help the balance in our body for well-being for others. So it's a scientific approach to building resilience. Resilience is the first stage, and then you can excel on to having perseverance when you want to meet your goals. And we teach our pivot leaders to do this through their actions, behaviors, and thinking. Inclusion. I've had a number of meetings today, and we've talked about equality, diversity and inclusion, and how we get this right in our organisations. What we teach on the Pivot programme is the danger zones around not getting that right and the impact on the organisation. But we also teach just good general practice around being inclusive in our behaviours when working with everyone. And we can build that sense of community in organisations rather than a culture, which we have accidentally achieved through some EDI approaches. And we can now think about working in the hybrid world and keeping our teams engaged in that environment, which is a very different skill set to those who are more present in the workplace. When we are good at inclusion, we can make a big impact on the absence rates in our organisation. So there's some scientific evidence out there to show that if people experience episodes of exclusion, the brain doesn't process that in any different way than it does to pain, a pain response. So if you've got a team at the moment who are off with absence due to pain-related issues, I would urge you to go away and look at how you're operating with them, how your transactions, how you are working with them, and how you are driving up the ability to include them, because you can trip off that limbic hijack that is giving them the pain response. I mean, that's not a blanket cover for everybody, but there's some research there to say that we can make some good progress here. Value. So the V in Pivot is about value. We have so many leaders in our organisations who are standing on the mounting of personal and professional value, except they do not know how to communicate it, both internally and externally. And if they could, their self-esteem would raise up, and they would experience more positive emotions and feel better about the work that they do and be on purpose. So we teach leaders to be able to understand that for themselves, to be able to celebrate that in their organisations and become that key person of influence externally. But we also then get them to help their teams unpack that mountain of value that they deliver, so they can sell that to themselves in the business and demonstrate their worth, but also externally for our investors or our board members who want to hear about that, or our commissioners. Optimization. This is what it says on the tin. It's about optimizing our people to be at their best. And we do this using a grit and grace coaching model, which is a model that's linked to the flight, fright and freeze response. So on times when we're working with our teams, we teach them to leaders, we teach them to performance manage through developing more grit if it's required to get where we need to be in the short term, but allowing that grace period with them when they can, so they can re-energize and avoid burnout and still deliver on organizational outcomes. And finally, trust. And I think this is where I haven't actually heard trust be mentioned today in any of the sessions. Has it come up? Has anyone? No. Yeah, you did a bit of trust, yeah. So when we go through change, we lose trust because we don't always understand the change. So the brain thinks, oh, this is really ambiguous. And what we know about ambiguity is it's the biggest killer of resilience and trust. So we teach leaders to be able to love the people they lead. You cannot lead people if you don't love them. And when we love them, they trip off the oxytocin that's required for them to have a good relationship and a strong psychological relationship with their organization and the trust. Now, I'm not saying go away and fall in love with everyone in your business, but you get the notion, yeah? People who are in our teams that we may have a different preference in our profiles or our relationships in terms of our personality profiling, and we come together and work together, we may be adapting and connecting because we know that's the right thing to do in the workplace to collaborate, but we all know that if we're not that keen on that person, let's be honest, I teach conflict management, I teach all of this stuff, I know about the whole relationship awareness piece, but the unspoken things that are in meetings when we come together, or the lack of equity between a team, a manager and a team member, is obvious if you don't love them. So we have to learn to love the people that we lead and find a way to do that, to build trust. So that's the kind of science that sits behind Pivot in a very whistle-stop tour. But when we see Pivot leaders in organizations who are overcoming the brain hijack by operating in these 5 spaces through every transaction, everything they do in their leadership, we are seeing increased performance. We're seeing increased collaboration, and we're starting to see some green shoots around psychological safety in the workplace. If you go away today and start delivering some pivot leadership in your organization, I guarantee you that you and your teams will start to come up for names will start to come up for all the right reasons in your virtual and face-to-face meetings, because you will be attracting people to work with you. They'll want to work with you. Their brains will want to come and work with you. You will be delivering brain-to-brain leadership. I also guarantee you that you will be able to have more energy for the next work challenge the most, because you will be working in spaces within your, you will be improving your brain health, the white matter in your brain, where all of your brain can be operating healthily, and that will boost your energy source and natural drive to be aligned and on purpose. What we know about pivot leaders is they can pretty much make any project that they're involved with successful, because they're working on an attraction basis where people feel well, they share their wisdom, and they want to win at work, and people want to win for them. So I'm just going to close up on a couple of slides now, and then let's just have a chat about pivot leadership, or about your brain hijacks, or anything else you want to just chat about now at the end of the day. But for me, the leadership journey is becoming quite a predictable one. We heard from Navid earlier about the kind of top-end senior positions and the failures that come with that, and that for me was really interesting. And I'm definitely going to go away and think about that more and how that links to the work I do around pivot. But what we usually see in organisations typically is that we have these stags, don't we, in the organisations, or mustangs, whatever you want to call them, the people that sort of rise up against the average population in our workforce. And they're passionate, they're great at what they do, and they're aspiring to be some kind of leader. So they're looking at team leader opportunities. We see them, we think, yeah, we can really count on them. We really sort of, all the lights are shining on them. And then their ambition kind of takes them into a management role. And what I'm seeing is that in this middle management piece, it's a long road. And if the skills development isn't right, we're not seeing that kind of transition through an organization. We're seeing lots of limbic hijacking going on, and people are either stuck in the wilderness and can't move on, or are afraid to put themselves under pressure around their own well-being, or the lack of confidence, or the lack of aptitude to win. Or they bail and leave and they go elsewhere. If we can get them through this wilderness piece, and I believe we can by investing in pivot leadership competencies, we can start to see the unicorns in our organisation shape. And these are skills for life, so they will take them right through for when Navid picks them up to make sure that they succeed. So how do you become a pivot leader? I've got some little tools for you to take away, to think about in terms of how you can start being a pivot leader straight away in your organisation. Go and take the pivot test. So we've got a scorecard on our website at choosetogrow.co.uk. It's free, use it. It's a great tool, actually, if I do say so myself. No, it is a really good tool. I'm having some really good results with it, because what it does is just takes a score against the 5 principles, and then it gives you some quick hints and tips to get some quick wins for you right now in your leadership, so you can start to become a pivot leader. But then if you want to take that a little bit further with me, I am happy to have a conversation about your results. So please connect with me on LinkedIn, send me an email, let me know you've done the scorecard, and let's just have a chat about it, and we can make sense of your results together. And if I can help you in any way to become a pivot leader, I will. And then go away and try this stuff out. Look out for the brain hijacks that happen in your organization. I'm hoping that now I've raised an awareness to them, you'll start to experience it more through your emotional intelligence and what you're observing. But also try and think about, how do I operate as a leader? Through perseverance, through demonstrating more inclusive practice, through understanding value and delivering on value, optimizing and building trust, so I can be a pivot leader and put well-being at the heart of what I'm doing, but still meet my long-term organizational objectives. So I believe at Choose to Grow we exist to do all the other great things that leadership development companies do, which is build the skills and capacity in leaders. But I also think that we take it one step further, because we look at the neuroscience behind thinking patterns, thinking traps and thinking sets that can set organisations back or grind them to a halt. And I want to inspire you today to just go away and make your leadership a bit easier at the moment, because it's a tough gig. And I want you to think about the 3 W's. How am I promoting wellness? How am I helping with wisdom in the organisation? And how am I boosting the aptitude to win? On our publications page, there's a number of tools on there for you. Toolkits, white papers, a podcast, all linked to leading the shift to hybrid and the competencies required to do that, and then linking to the pivot methodology. As I mentioned early on today, I am a new author. My book will be present after one more retreat for one more week away, writing and finishing that off, and it will be with us around August time. And I've dropped an introduction to my book on your chairs. This is looking at pivot leadership through a female lens. It's not for the guys. If you are a leader of women in your workplace, take a look. You know, there's still work to be done around your leadership and getting this right for women. It's not about hating men. It's actually just looking at it's actually explaining my own personal journey with my resilience when I was in a very tough period in my personal life that impacted on my ability to lead as a female leader, and how I overcome my own brain hijack to move from bread maker in my family to breadwinner, and why I'm standing here today, and why I was laughing on that slide right at the beginning. So I'm not going to tell you any more about that, but the adversity that I experienced does actually impact 1 in 3 people. So it should be very relatable for you, as I'm sure some of you will have gone through that. And if any of my learning can help you, I hope it really does. So enjoy the introduction. You can also log on to emma-carroll.co.uk to learn more about pivot leadership and share the introduction with anyone else. So just to sum up, pivot leadership, it's based on the organisational context in which we're working in. It was born from the pandemic, but it's honing everything that we already do really, really well, but linking it to neuroscience. It is tested against my own origin around my personal story, which will add huge weight when you read the book about how I used the 5 principles to overcome my adversity. But for a quick takeaway, all I want you to think about is how do you reduce the limbic activity in your organisation and increase the frontal cortex muscle to create the greater ability to be well at work? And how do you do that and influence thinking and behaviour in your organisation moving forward? Because it's the only way forward and the only way to lead continual change and achieve psychological buy-in long term. Thank you very much, and I am open to questions or comments or just a good old chat.